January 3rd, 2020, and revised October 10th, 2020. Will we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? My flag. Okay, I've got the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
Okay. All right. Ed, are you here? Our presentation is Ed English on the winter market.
Yes, I'm here.
You are?
Yeah, I think so. I see myself. Do you see
me? We see you.
Okay. So how do you want to, I thought I'd read a statement, if that's okay with you. I sent you, Anthony sent you last week, and then I thought maybe a statement might be, since some other people perhaps are listening, I thought I'd just read a statement, if that's okay. All right?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a proposal for the Winter Market 2021. The Winter Market last year was well received, with former Governor Kane becoming a regular shopper, giving our initial efforts greater recognition. More importantly, the Winter Market gave a boost to our summer market, which was always our goal. Then the advent of the COVID pandemic changed everything, but the farmers and vendors made the necessary adjustments essential to open the summer market on June 6th. Unexpectedly, we had to pivot abruptly because of a planned peaceful protest in town, and our opening day was at the municipal pool. This turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as the parking lot at the pool was 2 or 3 times larger than the train station, enabling us to adhere to all the new health and safety guidelines for farmers markets throughout New Jersey. Shoppers felt safe and responded by coming every Saturday. The addition of PB&J's rock and roll acoustic guitar music was the perfect background to help shoppers feel comfortable during COVID. It was the large number of new volunteers to keep everyone aware of the required guidelines, however, that made the summer market run smoothly at the beginning and throughout the season. It is not premature, I think, to say now, even though the market runs until November 21, that the farmers market gave a boost to the community and the downtown. It was the new volunteers acting as ambassadors for the market that made it turn out so well. Consequently, our farmers and vendors are very interested in holding the winter market again. They fully understand that restrictions need to be imposed on an indoor winter market, so instead they would like to have a market totally outdoors. In order to gain more insight into the potential of such a market, I asked them about their past experiences participating in winter markets. All their experiences were positive. I have included their responses in full in a separate document, email responses from farmers and vendors. In fact, since COVID, outdoor markets are becoming more common in Jersey and even the nation. I believe the success of our past winter market and summer market are excellent predictors for opening an outdoor winter market. However, because of predictions about COVID for the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, I am wary about involving the borough in a venture that could face unanticipated problems. For instance, we will need access to the train station for the lavatory, for breaks to come in from the cold, etc. And the requirements for maintaining health and safety will be higher. Will our health department approve us? This summer, we were fortunate to have volunteers available to help with setup and takedown, to answer questions, to remind people to wear masks and keep a social distance. That level of support has declined recently as the weather has cooled. With colder temperatures in January, we may not have enough steady volunteers. I am making this presentation to the borough on behalf of the farmers and vendors for a winter market in 2021, and yet there are some other issues to address. If the winter market is not well attended and has to be canceled because of illness or some winter weather emergency, this could have a negative impact on the summer market as well. We have been fortunate to have a successful summer market for 26 years. Even with the nearby competition from Bedminster, the Burnsville market has been a major attraction for our downtown this summer. In summary, I am requesting approval for an outdoor winter market for January through March to continue the success from last year, with a clear understanding that starting now, we can readily address the reservations I have raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. One of the problems we may run into is somewhere in that January to March, we may actually have a tenant in the train station. Although I would think we could still have access to the laboratory. Jack, would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay, so they could still get inside on the commuter section of the train station.
What about using the pool parking lot area?
In the
Like we
winter.
did the summer market, I mean, the pool won't be open in the Saturdays and the winter. Would that be and you'd have more space, like you were saying, for the times that you were there with COVID. So would it make sense to use the parking lot over there, and would that interfere with other borough activities, I guess?
Do we plow that if it snows in the winter? Does Ralph know that? Ralph?
Hold on. Okay. The borough does not plow it, but it is plowed by the school because that area is used as a staging ground for pickups and I believe and drop-offs in the morning and the afternoon.
Okay, so then that would be plowed if there was snow. So that's a good idea.
Can I address that, Tom and Council? So remember when we went from the train station to the pool, we also had people at the train station, and we had signs made up and put up all around town saying we were making this move. It was not just, everyone reads their email and they just do it. It was, and some of the farmers still feel they lost business. I had to monitor that very quickly, but they felt by going to the pool, the drive-by traffic on 202 was lost. Now, personally, but see, that's just me. I thought the offset was beneficial so that the business came back later, but I can't speak for them. They really feel strongly that that would be business would be lost. The other thing about the pool, the question, would actually the pool facility be open, Tom? I mean,
yeah, that's true. We may not have access to it more.
We'd have to have some temporary facilities, porta potties put up, I think.
I think potties in the winter would be ghastly.
Yeah, and there's no place to get warm.
The other challenge just to consider, and look this, but just to keep in the back of the mind, if a new tenant does come on the RFP as scheduled, there very well may be construction at that site as well. So, I mean, we're looking into the future, but there just may be some things that would require some flexibility.
Absolutely.
I'd expect there to be construction. They're going to have to fix that up.
That's sort of that's my point, Jeff.
And that's a good point, because even if the bathrooms remain accessible, doesn't mean that the availability to warm yourself might not be.
Or the parking lot in front of the, parking in front of the building. There may be construction vehicles. It may be unsightly.
So let me, if I can, address that a little bit. I think the lavatory, because I go into the building often now. We keep just one door. There are 9 doors to that building. So there's only one door we keep open because of, strangers perhaps loitering or whatever around. So there's only one door in, and that goes into the lavatory. And that's from the waiting room. So unless they're doing construction in the waiting room, and unless they shut down the lavatory to remodel the lavatory, that wouldn't be an issue. I'm sorry, what was the other question was about? What was the other?
Is the train station heated in the winter? Do we have the heat on if we don't have a tenant?
The train station seems to be heated winter and summer.
It does, okay.
So, but Chad, you had something that you said, oh, the
Oh, no,
parking.
I was just suggesting that there may be flexibility that's required if, if a tenant comes in and is doing
Sure.
work on the weekends, or, you know what I mean?
Sure, and we actually dealt with that well, we didn't deal with it. We talked about it last year, you may recall, and it was decided that having tents, having the farmer market tents around the building would not work, according to Chief Valentine. And so the farmers are and we did not have tents around there this summer either. What we did have was that first aid truck. So we do not park around the building because the access to the building, the drive-through, they come in pretty fast off 202. So we're quite aware of that. So all our tents and trucks would be down at the south.
Ed, how many vendors have agreed to sign on? Do you know?
I don't have a firm count, Mary Jane. There are about 6 to 8 vendors who are really interested.
Okay.
And we have 16 to 18 possible, but I don't think that many would come.
Yeah.
How many did we have last year?
Inside in the train station last
We
year?
had 9 last year, Jeff.
9. Yeah, that was good. I mean, that was a good selection.
Yes. And that's the tough part. Balance.
Well, I mean, look, from my perspective, I'm willing to say, let's let it go forward, just as long as we have an eye on flexibility if it's necessary for whatever tenants are coming in.
Yeah. Anybody have a problem with not doing or not giving it a try? Or are we all good to let Ed continue to explore?
I think if we have the interest, we should allow it.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So let me bring up 2 things. One is that I really want your help later on because, you also had some ideas about, something happening at the north end of the parking lot, which we're not going to go near, but that might impact us. So you have a lot of ideas, what's going on. If you can help me with the wording that I might put in there for the farmer saying, oh, by the way, you're going to sign up, but we may have this unpredictable condition, which it doesn't sound like it's unpredictable.
Yeah, and if you're on the south end, Ed, I was thinking that if you're in or proximal to the train station like last year, so if you're in the south end, I don't think it's going to bother you at all.
Yeah. Yeah, right. But okay, I like to get help if I can. I don't want to try to do this all by myself. It's a big deal. And flexibility, we've always had flexibility comes in different sizes and shapes. Some people, like a Malcolm Salvera, is enormously flexible. Some of the other people are not. So so it goes. There's a range of flexibility. But we've always worked it out, and we would continue to do that. Yeah.
And you will check with the Board of Health just to make sure they're okay with it as well.
And I want to check with Chief Valentine and John McDowell about the lavatory as well, because there could possibly be last year until Kevin, the chief, came by and looked at the market with me, looked at the building with me. Everyone assumed the locks to the lavatory were okay, but there are things like that we have to check.
Okay, well, I think we're good with you following up, and let us know what help you need.
Well, thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
You.
Thanks, Ed.
Good night.
And thanks for all the time you've invested in these markets. So it's really, a lot of the success is because of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We now have approval of minutes from September 28th and October 13th. Someone like to move them?
I'll move the minutes from September 28th and October 13th.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No? Okay. Now it's our open session for the public to make statements, or if you do read a statement, we'd like you to make sure Anthony gets a copy. He will be timing you for 3 minutes. You'll see him hold up his board. So we invite any members of the public to either raise your hand on the participant screen. If that doesn't work, maybe put it in the chat that you'd like to speak. So let me see. I'm not seeing anybody's hand. I'll give it a minute or two. Sometimes it takes a while. Anybody from the public wish to be heard at this point? And there is a second open session towards the end. Nobody? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Next, we have a public hearing on ordinance 2020-1856, an ordinance providing for the improvement of various roads in and by the Borough of Bernardsville and the County of Somerset, New Jersey, and appropriating $500,000, therefore constituting proceeds of grants from the New Jersey Department of Transportation. Does anyone on the public wish to be heard on this ordinance? I am not seeing anybody, so I will close the public hearing. Christine, would you like to move that?
I move to pass ordinance number 2020-1856 on final reading and adopt as published.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Can I ask a question before we go to roll call, Mayor?
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to confirm, and so this is grant money that's going towards Lloyd Road, correct?
Yes.
That looks that way. That's what I thought. Okay, just confirming. Yep.
Lloyd and Washington Corner.
Yeah, two roads.
And it's in the our package. It's on page 12 and 13.
I'm looking at it right now. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Ms. Zamara?
Yes.
Okay. Now I will open the public hearing on ordinance 2020-1858, an ordinance concerning accessory building setbacks in the R110 residential zone and supplementing and amending Article 12 of the Borough Land Use Ordinance entitled Zoning.
And if I may interject, the planning board found this ordinance to be not inconsistent with the master plan, but they did recommend taking out the word wall. The ordinance reads, no accessory building wall shall be located near to any side or rear lot line. Wall's been in there since at least 1979, I think.
Yeah, and Jack, if you'd like, I can provide a little context for that to council.
Oh, that's fine to take it out. I think it makes sense, and I think we can adopt it tonight with that amendment.
With that
It's not a
amendment.
substantive change. No, I think it makes sense. As I say, it's just been in there forever. This ordinance wasn't making any change to that before. It was just adding the R110 zone. So I would just ask that by motion you amend the ordinance to delete the word wall in paragraph D. So it reads, no accessory building shall be located near any side or rear lot line. And then you can open the public hearing on the ordinance as amended. And as I say, it can be adopted tonight without further hearing.
Okay, so we'll close the current public hearing, is that what you're saying, and then reopen
Yes.
it with the amended.
Please.
So I'm closing the public hearing on the ordinance as it's written, and then we're going to reopen a public session with the ordinance as amended, removing the word wall.
Yes, please.
Okay. Anyone in the public wish to be heard on that? And I don't know, Chad, if you want to comment or explain at all.
Yeah, so the old ordinance, and like Mr. Pigeon was saying, is going back multiple years. It described the setback as the wall itself. But what could happen in theory is if you had a roof line that extended, that's to say, longer than normal, 5 or 6 feet, you could encroach upon the other property.
Yep.
So by just removing that word wall, it basically removes the ambiguity. I can't speak. Can someone finish that word for me?
Ambiguity.
Ambiguity. Thank you. And just makes the setback clearer.
Yeah, and that, most ordinances do not have the word wall in setting setback.
Okay. So does anyone in the public wish to be heard on this? Not seeing any hands. So I will close the public hearing on this ordinance as amended. So Chad, would you like to move
Sure.
that?
Mayor, I move to pass ordinance 2020-1858 as amended on final reading and adopt as published.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Zamara,
Yes.
Mr. O'Day,
Yes.
Mr. McQueen,
Yes.
Ms. McCready,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue.
Yes.
All right, I will now open the public hearing on ordinance 2020-1859, supplementing and amending Article 12 of the Borough Land Use Ordinance entitled Zoning to amend Section 12-23.15 signage. This is the revisions to the signage ordinance. Would anyone in the public like to be heard on this ordinance?
Now, I do note that the planning board has made a number of recommendations with respect to this ordinance, and I was not directly involved in it. So I defer to Chad or somebody who can.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that are more there's one thing that's more substantive. So the planning board would like to redress the concept of real estate signs. And they've agreed to take this back up after the calendar year to relook at the real estate sign issue to help to refine it. So this is a slightly other issue. Jack, that was the only substantive one that I had on my list. Was there something else that they sent to you? Because I did not receive the official notice.
Yeah, we just got it from Anthony earlier.
Yeah.
I'll just call it up.
Can you
I
read
got
the
it
other
earlier
tonight to provide
tonight.
context?
Wait a minute. So this, when we got something earlier, what time did this come over?
It came over-
6:35.
6:35, yes.
So 25 minutes before the meeting, the planning board submits something,
Really?
and we're supposed to review it. I don't think. we should.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the material.
Yeah, I haven't seen
I
it either. I'm
reviewed
looking at it now.
what was in our packet, and I don't want to vote on something that I haven't reviewed.
I don't blame you.
Well, Chad, were you proposing that we put this off to next year, or you're saying
Yes.
that they
No,
want to
so
they
I'm
want to reopen
proposing-
it next year? They want to reopen it next year after we pass it tonight. What did they want to do?
We're going to reopen it next year, and we're going to pass it tonight. So the real estate sign item, they believe that we can get better in the way that we discuss real estate signs, and the planning board will take up the issue again next year. So this is not involved this evening. I did open up the document that was just sent.
It basically just says it's not inconsistent, so.
Yeah, it does. So so if you have the sign ordinance open, there was an error in section 122315. If you want to go there, it was a Scribner error.
No, it's the principle. We reviewed the material that was sent us, and now find. I don't want to take something secondhand or by hearsay. It's not, not that I don't think you're a good guy, Chad, but this is not the way to do it. I don't want to vote on an ordinance that has been amended that we haven't had a chance to review.
I don't think it has been amended. I
It
think
hasn't been amended
they had
yet.
some suggestions.
They suggest that we remove the sentence that says no real estate sign may be
Yes.
illuminated. So they want us to permit real estate signs to be illuminated, and they want us to permit real estate signs containing more than 3 colors.
Well, so there are two issues here. So John Sabo, in the discussion, if you look at H temporary signs, there was a strike through that was done by accident by him, which he struck through in no case shall a temporary sign be eliminated. That was a Scribner's error on his part in the draft that was sent. And then the other issue which they found in number C, real estate signs may continue not more than 3 colors. That was globally removed earlier in the document. for all signs, and there are some reasons for it. And they wanted that strike-through consistency to happen as well. Now, Jeff, if you feel more comfortable that we discuss this at a later date, we can.
Well, I'm just troubled. I don't know what else comes in at the last second, but the planning board had ample opportunity to review this, did they not?
This was reviewed by the planning board last Thursday. I'm not entirely certain why the documents just were received.
Councilman McQueen, I just clarify one thing you said. The item C, real estate signs may not contain more than 3 colors.
Yes.
That striking that would make it consistent with the rest of the document, and the implication being that real estate signs could have more than 3 colors.
Yes,
Okay.
That is the implication.
And further to that was your point that after the new year, even if we were to pass it that way tonight, they want to reevaluate the real estate situation.
They would like to reevaluate the real estate situation, yes.
I'm just curious, what is the issue with the real estate signs that they feel they need to remedy by redoing? We've worked on a sign ordinance for over a year.
They believe that there's still too much blight, and I'll put quotation marks around the word blight, in the real estate situation, and that we can become better with it.
Yeah, they didn't want it to be too noticeable on 202 as people drive by.
Understood. Jack, I have a question for you. If we were to pass this tonight and then they came back with something more restrictive related to real estate signs in January or February of next year, what would happen to the real estate signs that went up in October, November, and December this year?
Well, I guess they'd be grandfathered, but they're temporary signs in any event. So it's not like it's a permanent fixture that, would get non-conforming structure status.
Okay, so it's not like if somebody had a real estate, I mean, some of the realtors have their own signs in front of their own buildings as advertisement. Would they be impacted by this as well? Like, in other words, it's not on a building that's for sale, it's in front of their own.
They would not, because it's not part of their site plan to have those signs in front of their building.
Okay, so they wouldn't be allowed those in any instance.
That's right. That's right. And as I say, the ones that are placed in front of houses for sale prior to the amendment could stay, but once the house sold, that would be the end of that.
I see Jeff Horowitz has his hand up and we're still in public session. So Jeff, would you like to comment?
You're on mute, Jeff.
Yeah, I just want to just confirm what, first of all, we did work, I'm on the planning board and we did consider this last Thursday. I have no idea why this did not get through sooner. The planning board's sense was that the ordinance was consistent with the master plan and was eager that the council move forward to adopt it as soon as possible, put it in place with any changes we might come up with with respect to real estate signs after we do a little bit more investigation and discussion among ourselves. If council approval would have to be adopted as an amendment, but there was no sense that that should be allowed to hold up the passage and implementation of the ordinance. As to the other changes, I can only confirm what Councilman McQueen said. What these were reviewed as essentially errors that Jack Sabo made in making doing the redrafting. Were not changes of substance, and I have no idea why they only got to you today, but I can only apologize for that on behalf of the board.
I think if you wish to adopt
no other errors?
I'm sorry,
None
Jeff?
of us had a chance to review this. Do we have a sense of confidence that there's nothing else to be picked up?
There is no such thing as a perfect ordinance, but
That's right. That's why we have amendments.
Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying, Jeff, is the planning board wanted us to move forward.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I think those changes as outlined by Chad and Jeff are minor. You could amend by motion tonight and adopt this evening if you wish.
But the reason why I'm curious is because it sounds like there was a transcription error or some sort of notation error that involved those two the real estate sign issues. Is that correct?
It's more of
Or
a
something?
harmonization error when we had multiple documents is my assessment of it, Jeff.
Okay, so this is my concern. So from 2 or 4 weeks ago, when we first considered it, and we all, held hands and said this is good, there have been somehow multiple copies of it, multiple
No, Jeff, this
iterations.
error was present when we all considered it 2 weeks ago.
There was. Okay.
Okay, so actually then I think I have to close the public session and then reopen it for the amended version with those.
Same procedure we followed on the last ordinance.
Okay, so we will close this public session and I will reopen the public session with the amended changes that Chad explained.
But we need to have a motion to amend in a second and a voice vote on the amendments.
Okay,
So let's see, I will go back.
you wanna
I'll
just-
move to pass ordinance 2020-1859 as amended on final reading and adopt as published.
No, we need a motion to amend
a
first.
motion to amend first.
As you previously
I'll move
outlined.
to amend. as
I'll
discussed.
second.
Can that be, is that a roll
That can
call?
be a voice vote.
Voice vote, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Okay, so we've got now we can.
Can
now
I
we-
clarify that the amendments we struck that one thing we unstruck the one item and we struck the no more than 3 colors. So we unstruck the Scrivener's error and then we struck the no more than 3. Those are the 2 amendments you proposed, Chad?
Those are the 2 amendments the planning board proposed.
Oh, got it. So those are what you moved and that's what we just voted on. Thank you.
That's the amendment, okay.
Right.
Now we have the public hearing on the ordinance as amended with those 2
Right.
amendments. Does anybody want to be heard on the ordinance now? All right, I am not seeing any, so I will close the public hearing. Chad, would you like to move the ordinance?
Yes, I move to pass ordinance 2020-1859 as amended on final reading and adopt as published.
I'll second.
Okay, voice vote, please.
I think it's a roll call. I think, not a voice.
That's what I meant, I'm
That's
sorry. Let's see, roll call. I was looking at the next ordinance. Go ahead.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond,
Yeah, I can't vote on something I haven't read. I'm going to have to make a no vote, not a no against it. I mean, an abstain vote. I just can't vote for something I haven't read.
abstain. Okay. Ms. McCready,
Yes.
Mr. McQueen,
Yes.
Mr. O'Day,
Just like to second what Councilman Hammond said, I'd like to clean up the process a little bit. Having been on the planning board before, I actually was at the initiation of the discussions around signage. I think it's important for us to have updated signage. This is something that's been in discussion and of interest, I think, to the public. And I think it's long been in development. I hope that the planning board has done their due diligence based on the information we've got from our liaison to the planning board. I'll vote yes.
Ms. Zamara,
I'll vote yes too.
I just want to make a point that when I said I have something I haven't read, it's not because I haven't done my job as a councilman. It's because the planning board didn't get it to us in a timely fashion.
Okay, I will now open the public hearing on ordinance 2020-1860, an ordinance establishing a fee for canceled housing inspections and supplementing and amending Chapter 11 of the Borough Code entitled Property Maintenance. And this was brought to us by Jeff Price, our zoning officer, who have had some numerous people canceling at the last minute, which makes it difficult for them to reschedule. And so they wanted to have a fee imposed if that happens often. So does anyone from the public want to be heard on this ordinance?
Isn't this just for scheduling it?
No, it's a public hearing.
Yeah, right.
think we introduced it last time. I'm not seeing anybody wanting to be heard, so I will close the public session. I guess since this is zoning, Chad, you want to do that one?
Sure. I move to pass ordinance 2020-1860 on first reading,
Final.
on final reading.
There you
Sorry,
go.
I was on the ordinance. I was not on the same page.
And adopt as published.
It is adopted as published.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Zamara,
Yes.
Mr. O'Day,
Yes.
Mr. McQueen,
Yes.
Ms. McCready,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue.
Yes.
Okay, Jeff, would you like to move the next ordinance?
Let me pull that up.
This is a safety one, so.
Trying to toggle between my screens here. Excuse me. I'm not able to pull up the agenda, unfortunately. Can somebody
Oh.
You
else?
want me to?
I'll move it if you like. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Councilwoman, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mr. O'Day. All you.
I move ordinance 2020-1861, establishing speed limits on Lord Road and Washington Corner Road and supplementing and amending Chapter 7 of the Borough Code entitled Traffic, be introduced by title, passed on first reading, published according to law, and that a public hearing be scheduled for a meeting beginning at 7 p.m. Monday, November 9th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Is the chief on tonight or no?
Yes, he is.
Did we get the feedback?
I wanted to just discuss some of the feedback and, just in case any of those residents from Lloyd Road are on with us tonight, or if we went back to them at all with our findings.
Yeah, and I think this was supposed to be a voice vote too, right?
That's what we were doing. I said all in favor, and we said aye. Right? Did we just do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, except we didn't really get there because I didn't respond either because I was wondering myself if we went back to the residents with this. And I also had a couple of questions on the recommendation as well.
I'm not aware that we went back to the residents, so the chief may be able to address that.
We have not reached out to the residents at this point. We provided, Dr. Hammond, Public Safety, with a copy of the engineering report. I provided it to Jack Pigeon to prepare the new draft ordinance. So, here it is. If you want to discuss it, if you have any questions, it's the report that, he came up with based on his study.
And what's the,
The outcome was that we would reduce the speed limit on Lloyd Road to 30 miles an hour and on Washington Corner to 25. And then there was additional recommendations that had to do with signage. And then we were to implement the electronic speed signs.
I'm just curious as to why one would be 30 and one would be 25. What is?
It has to do, based on what I read, Mayor, in his report, it had to do with, his examination of both of the roads and, what he found when we did the site visits up there. It has a lot to do with roadway width. It has to do with the condition of the road. It has to do with the horizontal curvature of the road, how many curves are on the roads, the grades that are on the road. But it also is tied to the 85th percentile, which is an engineering standard that is used to determine speeds on roadways. And there's a 10-mile-an-hour tolerance within the 85% or the 85th percentile that he can adjust the speed limit to by the federal highway standards. The speed data that was collected on those streets would be within those tolerances as well.
Okay.
He believed that 30 miles an hour was the most reasonable speed for Lloyd Road based on all of that data. The one thing that he did note and that we discussed was there's a minimum sign plan that's going to be going into place. We're going to be upgrading some of the signs. We're going to be adding the electronic speed signs as well, which have been proven effective in reducing speeds on roadways. He made a couple of other recommendations as far as filling in some of the deep ruts that are alongside the road where vehicles have obviously been running off the road on some of the curves. And also he made a recommendation regarding a couple of trees that had been previously struck by vehicles that are very close to the paved portion of the roadway in our right of way as well. You know, they're two very different roads. I don't know if you've all had an opportunity to drive them. Washington Corner is a very is narrower, I believe. It's a lot more curves. The condition of the roadway right now is not in good shape at all. Lloyd Road has more straightaways, and it's been recently repaved. So, you know, while they're going in the same direction, east and west, that's about the only similarities that they have.
Okay.
So, you know, they're different roadways, and he felt that 25 was much more conducive for Washington Corner, and that 30 was the appropriate speed for Lloyd Road, and I don't disagree with him.
Right, so is the engineering report is a public document, yes?
Yes.
So that can be shared with the residents, or we can maybe put it on the website, or?
Jack, do they have to request that, or does it have to be?
Yeah, we can put it on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, I think people would want to, otherwise you're going to get a million requests anyway. So I think if we make it available.
Yeah, it's a public document.
I can give it to Anthony tomorrow and have him put it on the website.
And if I could add, I did ask whether we could, as a council, in essence, perhaps override might be the word, override the engineering on our own volition, make the speed limit 25. And we cannot. We have to, state regulations, we have to adhere to the engineering study because it's an engineering question. So we're not able to unilaterally deviate from the recommendation.
Okay.
So, Dr. Heyman, you asked me that, and that's what I told you. I just want to confirm with Jack, our legal counsel, while he's here, because that's my understanding. The engineering study is required to establish the speed limit. And once we do that study, you know, we're bound to that study if we want to set that speed. We can't just arbitrarily, I don't believe, do something different once it's been recommended to us. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you. Gina, you had questions?
Yeah, I had the same question you did about the 30 to 25 on the different roads, and the condition of the roadway makes sense. And of course, Lloyd was just recently paved, and Washington Corner will be recently paved in the near future, or soon to be paved in the near future. So I'm just wondering how much of the condition of the current roadway for Washington Corner played into effect versus the condition of the roadway on Lloyd Road, since it was just recently paved. We didn't get the actual report, Chief, just so you know. We only got the
I mean, he looks at, he doesn't compare the two roads. He looks at each road on its own merits individually.
No, yeah, I'm just wondering what the condition of the roadway, how much that plays into his recommendation.
So what you're saying, in other words, if it were paved now, Washington Corner, would that make a difference?
No, actually, I'm asking the reverse. If Lloyd wasn't paved, would it have made a difference?
Well, it could have
not really too much of a difference, because the speed data, remember, we took speed data before and after. After we paved Lloyd Road, the speed increased over where it was when we did it the first time.
Yeah, I was just wondering how much the condition of the roadway actually played into the recommendation.
I don't know how much, but I do know he noted it. He did note in his report.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
And that leads to higher speeds. So he takes it into consideration. How much it factors into his decision, I can't say.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was like, ratings and percentages in the report, because like I said, I didn't see it. I only have the ordinance.
In my conversations with him, I mean, look, roads can be repaved and the conditions can change, and that can have an impact, obviously, on the speeds that are being traveled on the road. And if that happens, we can, excuse me, we can revisit it and adjust accordingly. But I know that Washington Corner Road has a lot more curves, and it's narrower for significant portion of it as you head towards Mendham. I don't think it was a bad call at all what he did, and I understand why he did it. I'm in agreement with him. I think he's right on.
Water has a steeper grade also.
Yeah, there's some grades, there's some hairpin turns,
Yeah.
more trees. There's a lot. There are more driveways. There are more residents, I believe, along that span of Washington Corner Road. So, I don't know.
Okay, so.
I just want to bring up some of the arguments that residents sent to us while this, the last time this was discussed. And one of them was what constitutes residential area, because I think the New Jersey law states that it's 25 in a residential district and 35 in low density residential districts. So is this a low density district? Because it doesn't seem like it would be.
Yes, it's a suburban, by statute, it's a suburban 35, which is the prerequisite speed. Did you just lose me?
No.
My screen went blank, which is the prerequisite speed for that road. It's based on the linear footage of homes within a set distance. I don't have it in front of me, Christine, but normally houses that are closer together and have more home frontage along the street, the more densely populated, and the closer those houses are, the more likely it is to be residential. Most all of our roads in the borough, when you get out of the downtown school area and the neighborhood areas, are mostly all 35, suburban 35s.
Okay. Any other questions? I mean, and we will have a public hearing on this at our next meeting, so the public will have a chance to comment.
Well, I think
And the
you're going to
report
have a
will be
lot of.
available.
Christine,
Yeah.
I don't think that, we should be disappointed by this. I mean, there's other things that are being done in addition to just lowering the speed. He's made other suggestions to make that street safer. And, he's coming up with a sign plan that once those signs are up, we can take a look at them. And then we can go back and supplement those signs with more signage if we feel it's necessary, or where we think that there might be a need for more signs. But we have to post it to the minimum speeds that he came up with in his engineering study for minimum signs.
Yeah, so I guess I am disappointed in this, and I haven't seen what you've seen, so it's hard for me to make that judgment. I think the residents of that street, putting myself in their shoes, I don't find any way that I could explain to them why it's so imperative that we make it 30 and not 25. That's just my point of view.
So Christine, this wasn't discussed in public safety?
We haven't had a meeting
No.
since the results came out.
Okay. Do you want to do the voice vote again on this?
Whatever the chief sends me, I forward on to the other members of public safety.
So you sent me the engineering report?
I'm pretty sure I did. I mean, whenever he sends me something, I forward it on to you guys.
John, are you on that? You're on public safety. Did you get it? No.
I am. Does this require discussion in the public safety committee before it comes to council?
It's still 2 weeks, so not in the meeting.
Well, we'll have the public hearing in 2 weeks, so either way, they'll have seen it or talked about it. But I think once you have the engineering report, you can't change it. You can't undo it.
Well, we can't change anything. It's his report.
That's what I mean.
We've discussed it with him, and I've discussed it with him, and quite frankly, we've all looked at it, and I don't disagree with him. Look, we had originally requested a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. I would have liked to have seen that too, but there are federal traffic highway standards that have to be applied, and that's his job to look at it and apply those standards. So, we're moving forward. I think we're moving in the right direction. We're taking other steps. We asked him to include the electronic speed signs, which he did. We asked him to look at some of the other conditions on the roadway, which I know he did. So, I don't know, Christine, I think we're moving in the right direction here. And I think this is going to have a significant impact on speed. And quite frankly, you could make it 25 miles an hour. But if you have a road where an 85th percentile is 41, those cars are going to, 85% of those cars or less or more are going to be doing 41 miles an hour. So that's what the road is conducive to the speeds being traveled on. So
plus if somebody
balance.
challenges a speeding ticket and you haven't followed the recommendation of the engineer, you're going to get the ticket thrown out.
Oh,
And
point.
I think if we don't follow it and there's an accident or something happens, I think there's some explaining to be done if somebody was to get injured and we, arbitrarily didn't follow the engineer's study.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Chief, there was one thing I did request that he was going to write some sort of extra email or an amendment related to speed humps or bumps, which he did not address in his report. I haven't seen it.
I'll have to go back and look for that, Jeff. I think he did send that to me. I'll have to look.
Why don't we all take a look and talk about it? Because we have to move it anyway, and we can always not move it in 2 weeks or vote it up or down. But it gives us some time to at least look at it and share our conclusions with the rest of the council.
I think that's a good idea, John. The other thing too is, we wanted to get this in sooner than later, only because the ground's going to start to freeze and it's going to become very difficult to get these signs marked out and get these signs in the ground. I didn't want to have to wait another 2 weeks and lose more time, before we knew what we were going to do or not do. So, we still have some time. I mean, we're just putting this up now for.
Yeah.
It's not final.
Okay, so this was moved and seconded. Yes, Anthony? Yeah, okay, so let's do all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do we have any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so there will be a public hearing in 2 weeks. John, you want to move the next one?
Concerning the sump pumps, I move
Yeah.
ordinance 2020-1862 concerning sump pumps and supplementing and amending chapter 3 of the Borough Code entitled Police Regulations, be modified, introduced by title, passed on first reading, published according to law. The public hearing be scheduled for a meeting beginning at 7 p.m. Monday, November 9th, 2020.
You have a second?
I'll second.
A second.
Okay, any comments, questions? You good with this? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we move on to resolutions. We have 2245 through 2257. Are there any council would like to discuss separately? Or questions?
I did have a question on I think it was number 50, the stigma-free resolution.
Uh-huh. That's from the county.
Right, and I have no objection to it. I just don't know what it meant. What was the action that would be taken? What is it? What does this entail? What does this just make us feel good, or does it actually do anything?
It's supporting the county's efforts, I think, is what they're looking for. They want every town to be in support of their initiative.
And what initiative? What efforts are they? What are they doing?
Uh,
There was no accompanying material as to what this all
It
entailed.
I think I gave it to you last week, what they requested. Let me see if I have it. It says the Somerset County Department of Human Resources has undertaken an initiative, the Stigma Free Campaign, designed to fight the stigma of mental health and substance abuse disorders. As a result, we are now stigma-free Somerset County. What is it? They want us to, they're trying to get each town to adopt a stigma-free resolution. We would like a resolution to be proclaimed in your town and perhaps a volunteer to serve on the Stigma-Free Alliance Committee. And then they gave us the resolution, and then there's examples. They actually have a toolkit. So if we want to do something, but first they wanted us to sign on. And then at some point, if we appoint somebody to be on their committee, then they can be involved in whatever their initiative involves.
Okay, thank you. I know, I remember talking about seeing the emails about opioid-free agenda items, and I didn't remember it being framed as a stigma-free, but I'm in favor of that. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question or? Somebody like to move them?
I'll move.
I'll
Res-
move. Oop.
Go ahead, Christina.
Go ahead.
I'll
There's a
move.
race to get off mute.
Do you need to say the numbers, Christine?
Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. You go and then I'll second.
I move that resolutions 20-245 to 20-257 be adopted.
I second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Ms. McCready,
Yes.
Mr. McQueen,
Yes.
Mr. O'Day,
Yes.
Ms. Amara.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now it's the mayor's update. We did have a settlement with New Jersey American Water. I believe it's being signed off on today, so it probably isn't public information yet. I can share it with you in executive session. But it is, we have what I think is a good settlement that having all the towns joined together really was to our advantage and will really help our residents. I attended the Somerset County OEM and JCP&L joint meeting to again talk about our last tropical storm and go over what the restoration process is. Again, JCP&L was saying that they had 30% of the people restored in 24 hours and 98% restored on day 5. It was actually 82 miles of wire and cable were replaced, and they had 8,000 locations of tree damage. But we are still having discussions about what they can do differently. The Somerset County Governing Officials Association meeting was on October 14th. The guest of honor was Mike Amoroso, who is the retiring county administrator. So he shared some stories of all his time at the county. On last Saturday, I served as an official witness for a resident's attempt to beat a Guinness Book record for consecutive Frisbee throws. That was fun. They didn't beat the record, but they're going to try again. On the
So just like one person throwing to another?
It's interesting. It throwing it back and forth at a 10-foot distance.
Tom, me and you can do that.
Yeah, we got it.
The record is 1,042 throws.
So how long did you sit there for?
Well, they only made it to 450 because there was a breeze and it blew. So I told them next time they should try inside so they don't have any environmental issues. But
do they have the town record? I think so. Maybe
might.
we can give them the town record.
Yes, we should give them the town record.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to beat it. No.
Yeah.
Who was it? Can you tell us who it was?
What's the name? They're on Old Fort Bonk. Do you know Joe Bonk and his son Julian?
No.
Yeah. But it's really, I mean, you have to film it. You have to have 2 witnesses, one who's an official person, elected official or whatever. And, there's a lot that goes into submitting an entry. So it was interesting.
How long did it take to get to 450?
It was only about 15 minutes, actually. Wow. Yeah. And they said they have exceeded the record before, but, when it became time to do it officially, they didn't get it done. So
what happens if the official blinks?
I'm not counting. There's somebody else who's counting.
Oh, okay.
I'm just witnessing. Yeah.
Are they going to try again on a calm day?
Well, they were going to try and get some time inside, like in a gym, if they could get.
Is it not an indoor and an outdoor record, huh?
No. Okay. On last Monday and Jeff Hammond was there as well. The Diversity Council had their first listening session. They had 30 participants, which was a good turnout. I think it was a really productive session. It was interesting to hear some of the people's stories of their experiences in town. And they now have 4 subcommittees, one to work on local government, one for education, which is about the community learning about diversity and learning about having trainings and speakers, communication, and then the other was community. So they're trying to set up a welcome committee. So when we have new people in town that they can feel welcome to the town. So they've really been, and if anyone wants to volunteer for any of the committees, they are looking for volunteers. I did attend the opening day of Back to the Future. Anybody else go to the Burnsville Theater?
I saw the vehicles outside, but I couldn't go in.
Yeah, weren't they? They were really
Yeah.
impressive. On Saturday, they had all 3.
Yeah, I heard it was
Very
great.
nice.
Yeah, it was a great event. We finished the complete count for the census. The last day was October 16th. Somerset County came in 4th in the state. Bernardsville was 10th in the county at 76.2%, and Bernards Township was first at 83.9%. So I think the state average was only 60 something, so we were still, we did very well, I think. October 24th, I attended.
A quick question about the census, because
Yeah.
unless I read it wrong, it sounded like it was the self-report number. The 76% was self-reporting. So
Yes.
Did that not include any canvassers that went around to speak to the residents?
They have not given us those numbers. We only had the self-report numbers. Yeah, I don't know why they don't.
Higher than that, because 76% is not that great. I mean, that'll end up hurting us.
Yeah, but it's still, I mean, it's still better than a lot of, even within the county, there were some that were really low. And I know they had people on the street. I don't know why we don't have those numbers as well.
Okay, but just to confirm, so we'll be, the minimum is 76%. We'll be better than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully. Yeah, this past Saturday, a number of the businesses on Olcott Square had a Halloween celebration. It was very well attended. Everybody really seemed to enjoy it. So, thank you to those businesses for working together to make that happen. I've been invited to serve on the Somerset County Human Services Advisory Council. So we have our first meeting on Wednesday. And I've also been invited to serve on the Mayor's Reentry Task Force. So that is about, now that they're going to be releasing so many prisoners, there's a lot of work to be done. They're trying to have the mayors involved in the programs to help people assimilate back into their communities. So I don't know why I'm on that, but they asked me so.
It comes along with services.
Yeah. So that's my report. We have committee reports next, or not committee, council committee. So public safety.
We last met actually before the previous council meeting. We met on October 8th, and the last council meeting was October 13th. So we haven't got a committee report since then. However, I will report that because there was a lot of discussion at the October 13th council meeting about the parking issues on Prospect. That engineering report is still outstanding, so we don't have that just yet to get back to people. We have, in response to all the questions from residents, we are pulling the data. Unfortunately, it's rather tedious, and much of it has to be done by hand. So some of the crash data that it was requested, for example, is still being collated.
Okay, thank you. Finance, excuse me.
Finance Committee, we've shared some information electronically. We did not have a physical meeting, but I did want to thank the mayor for her service over the last two plus budget cycles. The mayor has stepped down from the committee now, and I'd like to welcome Councilman McQueen, who's joining the committee this month. We also scheduled 4 meetings to begin the budget planning cycle. and also leverage the remaining time we have with our long-serving borough administrator who will be retiring at the beginning of next year. The 4 meetings begin this week and continue through before the end of the year. And those will be our preliminary planning meetings for the 2021 budget.
Yeah, that's going to take a lot of planning.
Yes.
Personnel? Chad?
We haven't met since our last meeting. We have an active search going. We should meet this Friday. So Jeff and Gina, I'll reach out to you and Ralph, and we'll put together a meeting so we can get an update of where things stand.
Okay, Public Works, Christine? You're on.
Christine, you're on mute.
Yeah, Public Works, it has a pretty long list of items that we were working on. The Polo Grounds walking path is still still part of our agenda, but we've done another walkthrough, and at this point, we're trying to determine the area of wetlands and how we can, make the path work with those wetlands as they are, or how we can potentially change some of the way that it's treated in that area. I don't know how else to explain it, but we'll continue to work on that and hopefully have another update at the next meeting. We already talked about the grant earlier. We approved that grant for the 2 roads, Lloyd and Washington Corner. There's another project that we're working on, which is the pedestrian walkway potentially from Boylan Terrace down to the train station. So we're working on a grant submission for that. Doug is working very hard to get that in by November 24th. 271 Minebrook is also on our list. That's also on our agenda later this meeting. So it involves submission to the DOT regarding the driveway, which we've talked about before. And there's also the consideration of the septic, because there's a septic on that property, septic system. The work on Hull and Lindaberry was completed in September. Then White Neck Road, also there was some repair work completed earlier this month. Library project completed earlier this month pertaining to the roof, which we've talked about before. So if anyone has any questions, you can bring those up. Police station mold is completed. That's all taken care of. And something that we kind of have to talk about, but we're still not really ready with a recommendation on, is the dam remediation. So at the Borough Pond, there's a dam, and you may recall that the state has come forward and said that there's requirements that we need to do to remediate that. So we're going to talk probably at length at the next meeting about options. What's the best option for that? Should we remediate it, or possibly consider, look into the option of breaching the dam and making it like a stream the way it was before the dam was there. Again, this is very preliminary, so we won't know for sure, but at least, we're kind of thinking outside the box, and this is kudos to Doug on this, because he really, he really wants to explore ways that we can save money on this and not have to deal with it down the road again, like we're dealing with it now. I think that's really about it. Anything I missed?
long has the dam been there? I mean, what's the history of that, really?
Yeah, that was part of some of the questions. Like, we don't know if it's a historic landmark. I doubt it, but it could potentially be something that we're not allowed to do. But we're gonna delve into that in the next few weeks.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a historic landmark, but I think it's a great idea to think outside the box about why do we even need it? What was the purpose for it being created in the first place?
Yeah, apparently they raised the bar on their requirements, and so we then were out of compliance, and so
Yeah.
we now are required to fix it
And if
to
we
now conform with their standards.
right, so if we remove it, then we don't have to. But it may cost just as much to remove it. However, you won't have to remediate ever again because it's gone.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Christine, what would removing it do to the flow of water in the area?
Well, you wouldn't have a pond.
You wouldn't have a pond, right?
Yeah.
And do we, that's the Environmental Commission, which I'm already also on. We're going to talk about this at our next meeting. There's some really good folks on there that if they don't know the answers, they'll know where to find them. So.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Land Use Committee, we did meet on the 19th of October, mainly to go over the schedule for the Audi property and also for Quimby. So I believe we just approved the release of the RFP for the Audi property. Those will probably go out next week. Probably the 1st of November, there'll be a period where developers can ask questions, I think around the 24th, and then submission of plans will be December 22nd. And then for Quimby, I believe the November 16th, we'll have a draft for council to review of the RFP. The 23rd will be a discussion of the RFP for the council, and hopefully December 14th, we'll approve the release. And I think part of that was not having it due back over the holidays. So, it would be coming back probably in February to give people enough time to put a proposal together. So that was kind of what we went through at the meeting. I saw Joe DeMarco here. Is he gone now? Yeah, so never mind. So that was where we are with all the plans. We've got a schedule. We're moving forward. So I think that's exciting. That was land use. Who's next? Anything for housing? I know Jeff Price is here. Did anybody have any questions on his report? Or Jeff, if you wanted to focus on anything?
No, good evening, everybody. The only thing I just wanted to bring you up to date with is last month last meeting, it was a suggestion that we do some kind of an electronic information to our tenants, landlords for their inspections, and we've been experimenting with a couple of software services that are out there, and we're still in that phase of just experimenting, seeing which ones are working and viable. It doesn't mean to say that the ordinance that you passed earlier would go away. There's still the opportunity for tenants and landlords to not show up or not be there when we show up. So. But I just wanted to tell you that that's something we're certainly looking into.
Thank you. Thanks for following up on that.
Well, Christine sent us a link, and we followed up with that link and then went to look at some other software.
Great. Okay. Do we have any council liaison reports?
I do have one for the library. The Board of Governors met with the library on October 20, and we are proceeding with the transition to join the Maine, which is the Morris affiliated library consortium. Right now, we're working with their IT people for the transition of our electronic data. It's a system called Polaris, and that'll take place sometime either the end of December or the very beginning of January, which is our goal. So that's moving along nicely, and the cooperation between the groups has been very good. We've started working on our preliminary budget for 2021. Looking at our current budget, things are tracking pretty much as projected, even with the craziness of COVID. And I think if they haven't already, the treasurer should reach out to you, Tom, and to the finance committee to start those preliminary discussions.
Okay.
There was a report by the foundation and by the Friends. You may have seen some announcements around town about the silent auction and 50 Drive, which goes on to sometime in mid-November. I can't remember the exact date, but we encourage everybody to contribute because we're trying to build the endowment for the library, and this will be a vital part of that. And then just the announcement, we did have the concert, the Mr. Ray concert, which was successful. Thank you to the school board for allowing us to use their property for the event. Oh, I have the date here. The silent auction and the 50/50 ends on November 17th. And then lastly, there is a blood drive at the library coming up. We've got 27 volunteers already. We have a few slots for so a few more individuals if anybody's interested.
Thanks, Jeff. I know I got outbid for the eggs. I wanted those eggs.
Well, you haven't been outbid yet.
Oh, but it was getting a little high for eggs. But
oh, that's another story. Yeah, I have to say, the price on the eggs took my breath away.
Yeah. Anybody else have liaison?
So from the rec committee, we met at the same time as our council meeting last week. So I missed that meeting. And the Board of Health hasn't met again since our last meeting, but wanted just to give the shout out for the flu shots that are happening at the Bernards Township Community Center tomorrow from 3:30 to 5:30. If anybody's interested in going to get their flu shots, it's $25 for residents and $35 for non-residents. But we are participating in Bernards Township, the Board of Health. So I think we're considered residents in that regard. So.
And do you need an appointment or you just show up at that time?
You do not need an appointment. You can just show up.
All right, thank you.
I want to add about the Open Space Committee. They've been working on forging a path through Peters Tract, and just to give them some recognition for all the volunteer hours that they're putting in. They're taking advantage of, what's left of the good weather. So they're still, trying to get as much work in as possible. So I just wanted to give that update for open space, which I think is good.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I know.
Or green team or a combination of both?
I know it's been Pat McFadden's been out there and Ed English. I think Ed posted some pictures of them working in there. It's not easy going. So
I was out there this weekend. It's those invasives are pretty deeply rooted.
Yeah, very invasive. Anyone else have any committees? Nope. Okay. Ralph, you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. The next is you were charged with your 90-day responsibilities. So you want to give us an update on where you are?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you,
Can I just
Mayor.
say that this is actually a preliminary update. We're only at about day 60, or give or take. We're not at the day 90.
No. It's a progress report.
Right. And I just want to say that Anthony and I and Councilman Hammond have sat with Lisa, discussed some things. I felt that the best way to get going on this project and getting the most valuable information that we need would be coming from our HR representative at Bob Clark's office. And Lisa is very well versed in all of this. So she's been our guiding light. And we have, she did come up with the first draft that we have sent actually, I guess, 2 weeks ago to the mayor and council. And I had Anthony do that again. And I've invited Lisa to be with us this evening. And I believe I called her a few minutes ago, so I believe she's on. Right, Anthony?
Yes, she is.
Okay. I thought it'd be best that once you all had a chance to look at what Lisa has proposed, and if any council member had any questions or had any different views or anything that maybe we should take a second look at or a second pass at, that tonight would be the time to do that. And again, the best person to respond to any of those things would be Lisa, and she's gracious enough to be here. So I'll turn it over to any member of the governing body to see what you think.
Can I just, one thing I did notice in the memorandum, our resolution that we had passed does say that the council would be mandatory for training, where I think you have invited. I'd rather be invited, but I know we approved mandatory, at least for the council. You know, I like that we are not making it mandatory for other volunteers because they're so hard to get anyway, but I think the council was mandatory. So that was the only thing that I noticed in that.
Mayor, I believe in the policy, it does say mandatory. I was trying to be respectful in the memorandum, but in the policy, I believe it says that the training will be mandatory for the mayor and council.
Yeah.
And volunteers, it says in there.
Did it say volunteers?
Yeah, it says all employees, volunteers, and elected officials will be required. And that's where you lose me there, because I don't think we should impose this on council people or volunteers, because we're volunteering our time, and that's, you know, it's enough of something else we could be doing other things with.
I didn't remember that. I remember.
Jeff, I'm not done yet. What does seek diverse candidates in making appointments to boards? It sounds like reverse discrimination to me a little bit. I mean, number 2 of the letter, I guess it is. I'm sorry, number 4. I mean, versus, you know, posting something, you consider all comers, but, you know, where do you draw the line? Like, you know, how granular do we get in like diversity?
Well, obviously, it's really up to the borough in terms of how they want to proceed when we seek diverse candidates. It has to do with how we look for people to do things, whether it's employees or people on the committee, whether we simply reach out to the people that everybody on the council already knows, or whether we look to groups within the community who might be able to provide suggestions as to candidates who might provide a more diverse perspective. So it's not reverse discrimination. It's not intended that we're going to select people based upon the fact that they may offer some different perspective exclusively. But the idea is that when we bring people together with different perspectives and different backgrounds and different experiences, that they can offer some different ideas and a growth and inclusion in the community. So that was what I understood that the purpose of the resolution was. And so when we talk about both in terms of recruiting, as you know, it depends where you recruit to determine what kind of candidates you're going to get. So that's what that means.
That's your number 4 there on the list.
Yeah, correct. That was number 4.
Where do you see that the volunteers are required to do this?
And the second to last paragraph, I think, of the draft resolution, page 76. All employees, volunteers, elected and appointed officials will be required to participate in diversity awareness training to enhance their knowledge. And in addition to mandatory anti-harassment training, does that mean that the volunteers are doing both, or what's that mean exactly?
Sorry, which, I'm sorry, John, I'm trying to follow what.
76, second to last paragraph.
Yeah, because I see in the memo from the attorney in point 1, it says they will be invited and encouraged as well as volunteers. But then you're saying, John, somewhere else says it's mandatory?
Yeah, the next page down, or page 76 of 114. Unless I'm looking at it's the next page.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think the invited and encouraged language should be continued forward.
You're saying the second to last paragraph, John, of the
paragraph
of the next page after the memo, the borough's policy,
which is this has been drafted by Ralph. Is that right, Ralph?
Yeah.
No,
And A, I guess it is.
the resolution, we accepted.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to clarify. Is this 10A, it's marked as 10A? Is that the resolution that we passed? Or is
No,
this?
that's, we
No.
passed something different. This is a policy, I guess, a policy
Yeah,
res. I
this
wasn't
is their
clear on that
draft.
either.
This is their draft policy that was
Okay.
due after the 90 days, I think.
So we're talking about the second to last paragraph, John, is that correct?
Yeah, where that it starts
Correct.
all employees, et cetera, et cetera.
All employees, volunteers, and elected and appointed officials will be required to participate in diversity awareness and inclusion training. So
And
we're
it says,
including
yeah, at the end,
volunteers.
it says, yeah, that training is in addition to the mandatory anti-harassment training.
Right, and that's by law, the anti-harassment, I believe. But maybe we take out volunteers.
Yeah, but it's inconsistent, right? This training is not in it because, council persons, employees, or a councilman volunteers. So employees are different than, I think we need to not lump volunteers, elected officials, appointed officials to an employee manual here.
Yeah,
This is
no,
a
I agree
general
with you.
statement.
That was the intent of the memo, was that we carved out the volunteers, and unfortunately, we had not done that in the resolution.
Well, I consider us volunteers too, so.
Yeah, we are and so.
I
this
sure
is-
it
this
sure
is-
sounds like a way.
We fit in two categories. We're elected officials and we're volunteers. So I think there's you could put us under an elected official category, or you could put us under a volunteer category. I think the elected official category is more appropriate for us.
Well, I think we ought to do it. I think that you lead by example, but I guess we're in three categories because although it's only $1 a year, I guess we're technically paid.
You never get the dollar.
I've never seen my dollar, so the consideration doesn't count.
My dollar goes to the Shade Tree Committee, but
Difference, though, I think, is the resolution we passed in August does say mandatory training for council people, but it does not say anything about volunteers.
So can I propose we just change it looks the third, 1, 2, 3, it's the third sentence, and the third sentence be broken into two separate sentences, one that talks about employees and elected officials, and then the other sentence talks about appointed officials and volunteers. Would that be a good way to separate them? So the first category would be required, the second category would be encouraged.
Yeah, invited and encouraged. I like that. I like the invited word.
I don't like the idea of us doing it, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Jeff said the right thing. Look, we have to lead by example. However, we all are also volunteers, and there may be a circumstance where we may not be able to. So I agree we lead by example, but I don't think mandatory is the right word.
well, I think
If I could just,
and I think there are two things. One is that there's the sexual harassment training, which we have to take for our insurance purposes.
Right.
And then there,
Correct. That's correct.
just so that we're clear in terms of what the commitment is that people would be making, we're looking at an online diversity and inclusion training, which is something that people would be able to take at their leisure. So it's not that you'd have to show at a particular time. It's something that could be taken on any type of device. So it can be on your laptop, you could take it on your phone, etc. So, and it's not going to be a 7-hour training. So I don't think it's going to be as heavy a lift as it might otherwise sound.
Well, frankly, as an elected official, I'd be happy to commit to diversity awareness training being one of the requirements for me to serve. I'm happy to be committed to that. If other people feel differently, that's their opinion.
No, I agree with you on that. I think it's the fact that we don't want, all our committee volunteers and things to have.
I'm not debating that point at all. I think we should break it into two sentences. I think the first sentence should cover employees and elected officials, and then everybody else can go in the second sentence, which is the invited and encouraged sentence.
So I would like to bring in, look, I agree with everyone. Look, this is an important thing. I'm not disagreeing with that. The issue is what the scope and what it means, right? So for me, look, in my corporate life, I've done this countless times. For me to go through and do an online diversity training is different than mandate a 7-hour live training, which I don't have 7 hours in my week that I can devote to anything. So I think putting the scope in there is probably important. A 1-hour online diversity training, I think, should be mandatory. A 7-hour live session is not attainable right now. So I think that language is important.
Well, I don't think anyone said it was 7 hours, but it
Well,
does
but right
seem
now,
like
Christine, it's open-ended.
Yeah, and that's what I'm
And-
concerned about. In 2 years from now or a year from now, it's like it's
Yeah.
something else. It's like mission creep.
So maybe,
Well, what I'm concerned about is that in the past, we've had instances where volunteers have harassed and disrespected and not treated others with dignity and respect. So I think we do have to at least make our volunteers aware that, you know, as much as we do value their time and efforts, we have to make sure that they abide by these standards. So whether it's something that they sign or something that they participate in, whether it's you know, a form that they just sign that states that they will abide by these rules, I think we have to put that in writing somewhere.
I think those are two slightly different things. Look, if there's a volunteer or anybody representing the borough that isn't doing so well for whatever reasons, I think those people should be removed. I mean,
But if you don't make them sign something in the beginning, then it, you know, why wouldn't you just say, this is what you need to do when you're a volunteer, instead of taking their efforts, having them offend potentially someone and then removing them? I just think we should set the standard right from the get-go.
so Lisa, what we could have them do is sign a copy of the policy. In other words, give them the policy and say, I have read and understand and will abide by. Then it would, so they're not, the training will be optional, but signing the policy that I've read it and I agree with it is not a big deal. But it makes them aware.
Yeah, I think that same document could say, and I've been offered additional training if I so choose to avail myself of it.
Yeah. I think that's
I don't know. I'm against, look, these are volunteers. I'm against putting hoops in place for this kind of stuff. Now, I'll stick with what I said. As a borough, we need to make sure that we have standards. So if we witness things that are bad, we need to take action. But putting things in place before a volunteer even sits at a table, I think is challenging, especially when we don't have the greatest track record in finding volunteers as it is.
Yeah, but if they're just reading one-page document and signing it, I don't think that's too oppressive on somebody.
Not a very high hurdle.
No, and
reading a one-page document and signing it is.
Yeah, and it just gives you an out if they do something. Yes. You can say, well, you said you were going to abide by this and you didn't. Bye-bye.
I think that's.
And I think if that same document says we will evaluate of additional training if you want it, is reasonable too. I mean, it's just a little blurb at the end of the document. Look, my son signed a behavior thing for getting a Chromebook from school this year. I don't think that this is asking a lot of our volunteers.
I'm sorry, I had a little electronic glitch and I got lost there for a second. I don't know what the conversation was, but I wanted to revisit the idea of the appointed officials, because that would include the planning board and the board of adjustment, would it not?
Yes.
Those people represent, they're in large measure a face of the borough. They represent the borough. And that also is an area where historically in the past, there's been some significant discrimination with redlining. So I'm not so sure I would say that someone who gets an important position such as the planning board should be exempt from some kind of training.
Yeah, so I think right now with the current wording, Jeff, that there is a distinction. So it's a good point that you bring up as elected versus appointed, because I think I've only seen elected so far. Yeah. But even appointed though would kind of then lead to some of the volunteers as well. So I don't know how we distinguish.
Well, again,
they're volunteers and they're volunteers. I mean, but I think the planning board and the board of adjustment are different bodies than a committee, for example.
They're appointed officials. Is that the right category for them, Ms. Bearquick?
Yes, I just don't know how many other people you have in that category of appointed officials, or whether you want, and whether you're only seeking to add those two specific boards or any appointed officials. As it was formulated before Councilman Hammond had technical difficulties, we were dividing it, as I understood, into appointed officials and volunteers were invited and encouraged versus employees and elected officials were required. Obviously, it can be broken down however the council sees fit to break it down.
From a legal standpoint, Ms. Bearquick, where would the appointed officials best fit? With the former group or the latter group?
Seemingly, from my perspective, appointed officials who are making decisions like the planning board and the Board of Adjustments are people who, in my view, would be valuable from the town's perspective to have them attend.
So they would be in the former group, the group of employees, elected officials, and appointed officials would be more logically grouped from your perspective.
Yes, because I don't view, I mean, someone who obviously is on the planning or a Board of Adjustments has made a certain amount of time commitment, which may be different than someone who does something which is, in my view, a less organized type of volunteer work for the town on a less regular basis.
Jack, is there any other legal terms? Because I think like during our annual reorganization, there are other appointed officials. So yeah, I don't know if we have to be specific on the.
I would be specific because you're right. In the reorg meeting, there are pages and pages of appointed officials, and you don't necessarily want to require all of them to take the training.
So we could go with all employees, elected officials, and appointed members of the planning board and Board of Adjustment are required to participate. And the second sentence could group everybody else that doesn't meet those three definitions.
And can I just inquire about the cost?
That's not something that has been determined yet. There are free programs. So far, the free program that I have identified, I think will take some more cobbling together to make it work. I'm in the process of looking at a couple of different programs, one of which I like but don't love, a couple of others I've rejected. The one that I think would suit our needs, but it's not perfect, and so I'm still hoping to find something better, would depend upon whether the council wanted it for 1 year or 3 years, but essentially it's between $2,500 and $3,800 to do the training for 1 year.
Sorry, you were quiet on my end for a minute of that.
Sorry. So based upon the number which I had, which was 100 employees, so it could actually be a little bit more than this. But one of the programs that I've looked at that I think would be a tolerable fit would be somewhere between $2,500 and $3,800 a year, depending upon whether you wanted to commit to 1 year or whether you wanted to. It gets cheaper if you commit to multiple years. But as I said, I'm still looking. I've looked at about 5 different programs, 1 free, 4 paid. I have, of the paid programs, the best one is the one I'm describing to you. I'm still not convinced 100% that it's the best fit. Unfortunately, a lot of these programs tend to be more geared toward a corporate setting, and I'm still trying to find something that I think is best suited for a municipal setting. And obviously we would work with whatever, budget was involved. I don't know if the council's addressed what type of budget they want to allocate to this, but we obviously would find something within the parameters of what it is that the council feels that can be spent on it.
What I'm surprised is that the League of Municipalities hasn't developed something like this with the, amount of current demand for this kind of training and, to have it geared towards elected officials. It's interesting that they.
I don't disagree with you. I think it's a whole. I think that it's a place, I think it's valuable to police department. Like I think there's a market out there, and I haven't found the product yet that meets that market, but I agree with you. There should be a market because it is a different audience. Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of the programs are very geared towards a corporate culture.
Yeah. I've noticed.
So I'll go back to my position on this officially is, look, I'm fine with it being mandatory for elected officials and for employees. I agree with Jeff that we should lead by example, and I personally would take the course. I do not think that a volunteer outside of an elected official, this should be mandatory. I think it should be encouraged.
So are you including the planning board in that?
Any volunteer that's not an elected official, I think it should be voluntary. Should be encouraged. I think if we can find, and the reason I'm saying this is, look, if we can find a good program, we should encourage it. However, I've seen a lot of these that aren't very good. So I'm really hesitant to make an unknown mandatory for somebody that's a volunteer volunteering their time, just trying to help the town out. I think as elected officials, we make a different commitment to the town. And there's even a discussion about whether we're an employee or not with the dollar that we get paid on a year. I'm just not in favor of making this mandatory for volunteers.
But they'd still, Chad, you would still be okay with them signing the, reading the policy,
Sure.
signing it and saying, I'm aware of this policy, because again, like a planning board or board of adjustment could
Agreed.
get us into a legal situation.
Yes, I am in agreement to that, and I also think that part of that document should say that I've been offered diversity training.
Planning board and the board of adjustment are quasi-legal organizations, are they not, Jack? Planning board and board of adjustment are.
I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself.
Yeah.
They are semi-autonomous.
Yeah, they're semi-autonomous, but they're also they're somewhat legal. That's why they have
Well, they're
lawyers.
not a separate. They're not separate legal entities. And any lawsuit against the borough for damages would be against the borough. They can be sued for overturning a decision they've made, things like that.
Right, but the point I want to make is that they're a different breed of volunteer than someone who joins the recreation committee or joins the shade tree committee, something like that. This is a different group of volunteers, and somebody mentioned they make a significant time commitment, a really significant time commitment, and I don't think it's too much to ask that they do this, particularly since the decisions they'll make upon approval or non-approval can have significant impact.
Now, there are other statutory boards and commissions as opposed to advisory committees. You've got the Environmental Commission, you've got the Board of Health, you've got the Library Board. So there are a number of other statutory boards that are, adopted by incorporated in statute, or pursuant to the statute, I should say.
Well, I go by the advice of our HR counsel, which says that the grouping makes the most sense to have the planning board, the board of adjustment, the council, and the employees in one group, and everybody else in the second group.
Was council aware that the other boards were statutory as well? So they're really not distinctly different, are they, Jack?
I agree. Certainly other even statutory boards and commissions may have less power, especially in public policy, than the planning board and board of adjustment, but they are created pursuant to statute. They're not just locally created advisory committees. So if you're going to make any statutory boards and commissions to take the training, then I think you should specify those boards and commissions.
Statutory, which other ones are statutory? Environmental,
Board of Health, Library Board of Trustees, Shade Tree, we've got a committee. I think that's pretty much it. Most of our other committees are advisory committees.
So it's environmental, library.
I didn't make the distinction that it was statutory. What the distinction I made is that the difference between those other bodies and the planning board and the board of adjustment is if you make testimony before the planning board, you get sworn in. These are miniature courtrooms. That's very much different than the Environmental Commission or the Board of Health.
I agree. That's why I'm suggesting that if you're going to make the the zoning board and the planning board do it, that you specify them as opposed to making all statutory boards and commissions.
And I think we could restrict it to those two, and it's a different situation for them, and with a much different impact.
Yeah, their scope of responsibility, I think, Councilman Hammond, is different than the other ones, as you pointed out.
And in fact, the Board of Adjustment is quasi-judicial.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we're asking people for all that much.
Is this mandated at the state level?
That was my question to Lisa also. It's like, where do we stand as far, our practices presently, as far as what's, I guess, the best practices, for lack of a better phrase, I guess.
Subject to potential legislation and or directives coming from the state regarding mandatory training, which I think you can maybe anticipate in 2021 possibly. But at the moment, what the law requires in New Jersey is for employers to provide harassment, discrimination, retaliation training, which is the GIF training that we provide, to mandatory for all managers and supervisors and available to all rank and file employees. That's the legal requirement.
And does that include contracted employees as well?
No, it doesn't include, obviously, if you have an independent contractor who engages in inappropriate conduct, that's a potential liability issue. But you don't have an obligation to train your independent contractors.
Sorry, I meant like our contracted workers, like our DPW and our
Oh,
police
you mean
force.
collective
Sorry.
bargaining? Yes, yes,
sorry,
absolutely.
sorry.
It includes your bargaining unit
It
employees,
includes
most
them.
definitely.
Okay. Okay. And then I guess the only other group that we haven't yet discussed, so I'll throw it out there, is our fire and EMT. I mean, they are volunteers as well. So I just want to make sure that if we're calling out specific things that, I don't know if we need to make that clear or not.
So, but by and large, we're compliant, at least from an insurance and legal perspective, with what's required of the borough.
Got a question for Lisa?
Yeah,
I mean, yes, we're compliant. We're compliant with what the JIF and the law require in terms of who we provide harassment and discrimination training to.
Okay, what if people in those boroughs, in the boards that you were talking about, they get it in their corporate setting, can just opt out because, we get it, anyone who works gets it 2 or 3 times a year usually.
Maybe that's something we could.
Not if they're managers or supervisors, they need to have it here. If they're not.
I mean, I was thinking for somebody on like us or the planning board or the board of adjustment, if you had it in a corporate setting, it's,
I think that places you in a position where you're going to have to evaluate what is provided in another setting. And to me, that does not make sense. I think you should decide who needs to have it, who the council's committed to having take the course and make them take it. Because otherwise you're going to have to evaluate what everybody does in every other setting. And I think it's more of an administrative nightmare.
I think I'd like to see what would be required of us before deciding on whether we should require it or not, because it's like we're signing on to an unknown.
You mean to know what the program is?
Yeah, which one are we going to use? I mean, it seems not a reasonable question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
And who'd have to track this? Anthony, you'd have to keep track of the training.
I can keep track of that with a sign-in sheet or forms. Yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of the programs print out a certificate at the end or whatever.
It'll be online. I'm sure he'll have an administrator ID and he'll get the full report. But it will have to be maintained. So there will be an administrative cost to this, just so everybody's aware. Not that it's a big deal, but I mean, Anthony will have to maintain and make sure that he's tracking people down, reminding people they didn't take their training, et cetera, et cetera. And we have to decide whether it's annually, biannually, how often it's required. And to Council's point earlier, how long are we going to enter into a contract for? And then it'll be up again for another council to decide, I guess, in the future to keep this going or not.
Well, and like Lisa said, it may become mandatory from the state anyway at some point. So.
Well, I think that creates a different scenario. If it's mandatory by the state, you apply state law, and that's
right.
The general approach we take to a lot of things.
But again, we don't know what module we're using, so
Well, that's correct. That's what Ms. Barry-Click is researching. I took the free one, the one from the Ohio State University that was free, and it was interesting, but it didn't apply to us. By the way, it wasn't all that onerous in terms of time commitment. I breezed through it. The problem is it's geared towards teachers, not towards us. So really wasn't applicable to our situation. But I'm confident council will come up with something, and I don't think it'll be time, burdensome, and I think it'll be educational for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I just sat through a couple with my own corporate, that came out with them recently now as well. So the different ones, right? Not just the standard diversity and inclusion, because those we always got as well, and anti-harassment, all that stuff. But these are new, like the implicit bias stuff that are coming out now.
I'm still I'm not opposed to it. Like I said, I'll take it. I don't think we should put up additional hurdles that aren't mandatory by the state, because every time we talk about wanting to have inclusion and a wide variety of folks on our committees, we have a hard time as it is. I think creating additional hurdles that aren't mandatory by the state just make it continually harder. So
Yeah, Chad, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but if people are going to, I mean, and I don't think that it should be like everybody that's sitting on the rec committee necessarily, or everybody sitting on, you know, the Shade Tree Commission or committee, but, you know, I do think that, you know, the chairs of the committees, they're volunteering to be the chairs. They can take an additional 30 minutes of training or even
Sure.
45. It's not, you know, it's, again, like they said, it's not a huge time commitment, and it shows the culture, and it builds the culture and the awareness and the people that we're trying to invite and volunteer into the town. So I think it does set a tone and again, create the culture that we're trying to create as a borough.
I agree with that sentiment 100%.
Well, we don't have to decide anything tonight. This was the interim report from.
Right.
Very quick. And we'll let
Oh,
you-
I thought we were deciding tonight.
Well, no, I think we were looking at the policy. The goal was, is this the right policy that, you know, is this the direction we want the policy to go in? We obviously aren't going to agree on a training until we see what is available. So that's still, you know, an option. So right now we're looking at the policy piece, the second page there, which was 10A. And the only comment on that, I think, is how we separate that second to the last paragraph, I think, is where we are.
No, because there is a piece of this, because right now it's open-ended descriptive, right?
Yeah.
So it does not say what the course is. It doesn't say.
It says it's diversity, inclusion, and implicit bias. The lawyer, legal, Lisa, you're on mute. I see you trying to speak, but can't hear
So
you.
can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
So I think there's sort of two things here. I would never suggest that we put into a policy that we're going to do course A and these 5 people would be required to do course A. Because that course might change, and this is supposed to be a policy, so it's supposed to transcend an individual year. So if the concern about the policy is the mandatory nature of who's going to be required to take this training, the policy can be revised to say that the borough is going to offer diversity and inclusion training to appropriate individuals and leave the policy open-ended. And then when the borough, I mean, obviously the council, if we're going to purchase a program, is going to have to approve the program, approve the funding for the program, and then can make a decision in that same resolution as to who's going to be required to do that specific program. And then you can see how it goes. And then you can decide that if you're going to do another one, that it's going to be a smaller group or a larger group. You know, I mean, as I'm sure Councilman Queen sounds like he's had a lot of this training can account, you can do these for, you know, 3 days, you can do them for 7 hours, or you can do them for 45 minutes. I think to start an organization or a municipality that's never offered this type of training with some massive commitment like that, it's not going to be productive. And I don't think expecting, you know, I'm not going to pick out DPW or police or any particular group, but I don't think asking any of these employees to sit for 7-hour training is a way to start this. I think this needs to be an overview type of training that will introduce our employees to issues like implicit bias, diversity, inclusion, things that hopefully they've already are familiar with, but if they're not, this is intended to sort of be an introduction and get people thinking about things. And that's really what it's designed to do. So I don't think you need that level of granular detail in the policy. And if that's the overriding concern about the policy, I can tweak the policy to just generically reference that. And then when you get to the point where you're passing a resolution approving a specific program, you can at that point decide, based upon that program, these are the people we're going to require this year to do it.
I'm very agreeable to that type of a solution.
Okay.
And you illustrated my concern well. Leaving it open and the policy allows us to be more specific with the individual item, and I am in favor of that.
Yeah, I like that. Anyone else? Are we all in agreement with that?
I'm in agreement with it. The only thing I would say is that, you know, now every year we have to have the same discussion, you know, but that may be appropriate because, you know, things change, councils change. Maybe that's okay.
And I think
the environment changes.
It's worth evaluating every year. Was it successful? Did it work? Did it, you know, did people think it was worthwhile? Was it long enough? Should it be longer? You know,
I don't think you're going to put KPIs on this one, Mayor. It's evaluating implicit bias and measuring it is extremely difficult.
No, I didn't mean it that way. I mean in terms of how the employees react to it and how people, you know.
It's just going to be hard.
Yeah,
I think
no, I don't want to.
Something that we either do or don't.
We're not going to measure how well they've changed.
Yeah, it's hard to.
Sense of was this program applicable? Did people feel like it was something they could use or not? And then maybe look at a different program or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So if we go down that road, we probably should have an annual review scheduled so that we know it's coming up and that we're ready to review it. I just don't want to retread that, the old ground every year. If we know it's going to happen, it's going to happen every February, it's going to happen every June or whatever. We can be ready for it.
From my perspective, I think that we'll recommend a program. The council obviously will select a program. And then I do think there needs to be some reflection afterwards about, how it was, received by the employee community, et cetera. And then a determination made sort of on a going forward basis about, is this the right strategy? Is this the right approach? Or do we want to do something a little bit different the following year? And I agree that shouldn't be something that necessarily, at least in the first instance, should wait until it's time for that annual review. But rather, I think it's something that maybe, Ralph and Councilman Hammond and whomever should revisit after we put everybody through the first round of training.
Yeah. And maybe
so that looks like.
I was going to say the time to do it is probably January or February when we have new boards appointed, when new people signed on, that, they go through the training and then it's for the year and we would look at it again.
Lisa, I'm asking to look in the crystal ball. I know you don't have. Do you have any idea in regards to what the state is looking to pass and how extensive and the timing?
I don't, it looks to me like, are you familiar with the New York requirements at all?
I'm not, no.
All right. So the New York requirements have specific training content that you have to provide to all of your employees and specific parameters that you either have to utilize their harassment policy or that you have to have at least the same equivalent content. So it's pretty comprehensive in terms of what's required. Based upon, and I can share with you the new Division on Civil Rights harassment report if you haven't seen it. The new director is very focused on this issue. And so I think it would set forth what the parameters of harassment training and what the parameters of harassment policies and discrimination policies. Whether it will go so far as to require diversity and inclusion training is a different issue. I would guess that it may not. And obviously the reason for that is diversity and inclusion is an environmental issue as opposed to a legal issue. I mean, we all know that the law prohibits discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. The law doesn't require us to have an inclusive environment, but if you've been through one of these trainings, you understand why that's better for everybody in the work environment. So I would be shocked if the legislation required diversity and inclusion training, but I think it's going to require a more comprehensive harassment training than some employers are doing. I would like to think that my harassment training would fall within the parameters of what they will be expecting.
So if we're going to look at this every year, then it looks like we're going to need one of the annual re-upping licenses, Lisa.
Yes. I mean, although there's some cost benefit to a 3-year program from my perspective, until you've tried this, I think that the short-term cost savings is not worth the long-term commitment.
We get an insurance break, if you will, or at least it's required by the JIF for the sexual harassment training. Would they offer any type of incentive for taking additional training?
I do not believe so, although Ralph can certainly look into that. My understanding is that the JIF discount is a whole package. It's not just the harassment training. It requires the police chief to do certain things and other people in the police department to do certain things. It requires the policies to be reviewed. There's a whole list. I think there's like 10 things on the list of what the JIF requires in order to get the discount. And I'm not aware of them providing an additional discount for doing diversity and inclusion training.
But to Councilman McQueen, to your point about what does the state require, in my view, is the state's requirements are the minimum. And there's nothing wrong with exceed. In fact, I think it's advisable to exceed them. I think we're ahead of the curve. I think we're probably maybe one of the most forward-thinking boroughs or municipalities in the state. And I think we need to do what's best for us, not necessarily just what's minimum required.
Okay. I think we've covered everything here. So thank you, Lisa, for your time. And Ralph, will give it back to you to work with Lisa and
Will do. Lisa, before you go, do you feel that you've gotten, good enough information to massage what we've already put together?
Yes, I do. I can fix the program and the policy and send it to you so that you can share it with the council, so that can get passed if you wish to do that in the time frame that was contemplated by the resolution. And I will hopefully in the next couple of weeks be able to nail down a program, which it sounds like I think the mayor was proposing early in 2021 to conduct the program. So that seems like a perfectly reasonable time frame.
Great.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you.
I thank you very much for participating in this. Couldn't move forward without you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, council, too.
So I just have another question, Ralph, following up, because I think the resolution we passed was to include a review of existing policies and procedures. Is that part of what we'll see next time we get together, or was this the beginning and the end of what the resolution asked for?
Well, Lisa and I have, Lisa's put in an email to me that she's going to review a number of our policies. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yeah, so I have to do a review of your PPPM and your employee handbook as part of the JIF review anyway, in order for you to get the discount and sign off that I've reviewed it and that I believe it's compliant. And so in the course of doing that, at the same time, I'm taking a look at it for purposes of what was requested in the resolution to ensure that there's nothing in there that at least I feel creates any potential diversity and inclusion problems.
Okay.
And from my perspective, including this policy in the revisions to those things would be part of that.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
All right.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night now.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. And we're moving on to the Tour of Somerville bike race, which I believe, John, you and Jeff have been working on that.
Correct.
So what do you need from us?
Well, just sort of, I guess, a conceptual okay. Just real quick is about, if you recall earlier in the year, they approached us amongst a few other towns to have races sort of like in the week leading up to the Tour of Somerville, which is, if you haven't been, it's a pretty big event down in Somerville. It's a pro race. So you get, national pros coming out, this way. And bike racers will race multiple races in a week. And what they wanted to do is kind of have like, building the excitement, have like races leading into that. And the idea that Jeff and I and Mike Malikoff, who we were talking to the race director, is a Saturday evening race, say from 3 to 7. It'd be the Saturday of the Memorial Day weekend. And what they would like, and what Jeff and I discussed, we would like too, if possible, is to, the map was there to start, finish in front of the high school, have it sort of like tied into like a food truck or some larger community event. And hopefully it becomes something like Somerville has every year, where you get like lots of out-of-towners, lots of people there to spectate, to race, to eat, and experience your town. Jeff, do you have anything we want to add to that? Right now, basically, just an okay, sort of like great idea. Those who get road closure permits, all that kind of stuff, but just to advise you, get into public consciousness, and hear your feedback.
Right. The idea being is that we have it more than just a race; that it becomes somewhat of a festival. And that it would be also encourage or actually be inclusive of the downtown, since the staging area would be theoretically at the high school, that would be walkable to the town. So the idea would be to coordinate this with the rec committee and with other various groups in town to expand this beyond just a bike race.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
One of the things we've been talking about for actually Memorial Day is when we're going to reveal the mural. And I know downtown Burnsville was working on doing some kind of event with that. So yeah, between downtown Burnsville and recreation and the race, I think we could really make a full weekend of activity. So
Go ahead. I was gonna say it sounds really good. I noticed it says tour of Somerville. I mean, would our segment be the tour of Bernardsville? Like, I mean, because if we're gonna make it a community event, we're bringing in people from outside. I mean, can we make our little segment of the race the tour of Bernardsville or the Bernardsville segment?
I guess it hasn't been determined. Tour of Somerville is kind of like, is the capstone event. And
right.
When people refer to it, it'll be like, I'm doing some of the Tour of Somerville races. Oh, which one? I'm doing Berners Township and Bernardsville and, and Raritan. So how that filters out, I know what you're saying, get some more, pride of place, but
right, exactly.
I think it'll feed. If it's a good course and a good venue, it'll get it buzz. Like everyone will hopefully want to do our race, when people want to come spectate it. The other question I had sort of is if we have to use the high school lot, which is where the staging and maybe the festival, what could be, do we have a liaison in the school board to start talking about this? Who would that person be?
Which, by the way, is something that Councilwoman McCready's brought up multiple times that we need a liaison.
Yes, and I actually reached out to the superintendent and have not gotten a response back. I'm sure they're overwhelmed there at the moment, but I did ask for us to have a meeting. There's a new business administrator that, I thought that was a good opportunity to start a conversation again. So I will.
Should we assign a liaison from our side, I think?
What to do? You need to attend another meeting? You mean to go to the board meetings?
Well, I mean, just somebody who's, when the question like this comes up, it takes, the job to send the email or talk to their counterpart or whomever on the school board about things like, can we use the parking lot on such and such a day?
I'm happy to do that since I've been the one asking for this too. I'd be happy to do it, but Mayor, I'll leave it with you. You talk with them and see what they think and see how they want to.
Yeah, I'd
like to take it with them.
Start conversations with them about a lot of things. So, it wasn't just, I think we need to get that relationship going again.
Yeah,
particularly as a planning
that was
process.
my whole ask. So
Yeah, as a planning process for this, I'm sure other things, it's a long lead time event. So you want to not to have any administrative barriers thrown up in your face when you're 20 yards or 50 yards down the road from, getting something done.
We do want to nail that down because the race horse, which they're very excited about, they've actually ridden it. They like the way the grades, the turns, the
new pavement,
the course that we mapped out, which is in your packet. They find it very exciting. It has been predicated upon the fact that it starts and finishes at the high school.
Yeah. Okay, we will make that happen.
I just want to throw out this reminder. I think you're already friends with Joe Ray, the gentleman who came before us earlier this year, who had a great plan about doing a race around town.
Road. Yeah.
So maybe loop him in if you haven't already.
Yeah, I've talked to John about that. We have his name. Yes.
Yeah, there's a large number of cyclists in town who are excited about it, including Jeff Horowitz, if he's still here. We'll draft him too. So we got a lot of people excited about willing to volunteer, but we just kind of want to get it, more tangibly real before we start recruiting them.
Yeah.
Get the blessing of the school board. You guys are okay with it, and tell them what their next steps are.
Yeah, and I guess as the police have reviewed it, so it's okay with.
Yeah.
Yes, they've reviewed it. There will be a need for some extra officers. We'll have to do a little bit of fundraising for that overtime, but they're on board with it.
Okay, is the council okay with this? Anybody have any issues? We're good. Okay, keep going. I will follow up on the high school. What's the date, by the way? That Saturday?
It'd be the Saturday of the Memorial Day weekend.
But do you know what the date is? No.
I'd have to look it up.
Yeah. Okay. Saturday of Memorial Day. Okay. We have a request.
29th, May 29th.
29th?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. We have a request from Vollers to use the borough property to stockpile materials. Is this the group that was using Allwords that were?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, it was.
And they're okay with moving? I mean, They're
I
good.
believe that's already taken place.
Oh, okay, good. We've moved them because we were getting complaints about them being there.
Yeah, well,
Right.
I was wanted to ask what the complaints were, because honestly, I'm sick of seeing all these big trucks in our property.
I know.
mean, and every time we get asked, we just say yes, and it's there, and then it's like, they're there for.
Well,
I mean, isn't this
Seems like always.
an untapped revenue source for us? I mean, why aren't we renting our space?
I was thinking the same thing, Tom, when I read this. I was like,
Yeah.
again?
They obviously were renting from Allwards, no?
I would guess.
Yeah, I can't verify that, Mayor, but
Yeah.
if Kevin or Jeff, the chief is still on, or Jeff Price is still on, those were I got input from both of them about the complaints, but I didn't get specific ones. But if they're still on, perhaps they can illuminate on that.
Right, Ralph, this is Jeff. I got complaints from residents local to Allwood from Berners Township, as well as from our township, our municipality. And the complaint was that this work was going on through the night. And they were doing the road work on 202 and then bringing the spoils and material back to the Allwood property, moving it around with a bulldozer and a big light shining all the hours of the evening.
So doing that on Borough property isn't going to be make it any nicer for anybody, is it?
We're just
Well, on
shifting the
202,
problem to
there's
other.
less residential.
Right, it's going to significantly reduce the people it will impact, but there will still be impact. And I believe, Chief, this has all happened and they are now there, yes?
Yeah, I don't think we've had any complaints in the last couple of nights, right, toward the end of last week after that first night, Jeff.
That's
Once
right.
they moved all their material out and everything.
So they're already in our space? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm sorry, go ahead, Chief.
No, we talked to the administrator about this, Jeff, and also to the borough attorney last week about this. This came upon us kind of quickly. We were not aware that there were going to be night operations on that particular property up there when the night work started on Route 202. So the neighbors started complaining about the noise, and we all felt and agreed that the most important and first thing that we needed to do was to get that noise abated for the neighbors. So we, on an intermittent or temporary basis, granted approval to use our lot across the street once it was vacated by the contractors who were using it for the other project. So the lot was empty. When they started these projects, the lot was being utilized by somebody else, I believe. So, I kind of punted to the administrator. Jeff and I discussed it. The administrator discussed it with the borough attorney. I discussed it with the borough attorney. And we kind of felt, for the sake of the residents, that to move them across the street from our headquarters here was the best move, and that they would have to come before council tonight to request, more permanent use of that property.
That is correct, Mayor and Council. Kevin and I and Jeff discussed this, I believe, the middle of last week, if I recall, Kevin. And I agreed, and I'm fully aware that the council gives the ultimate decision to do this. But at the time, as Kevin said, I felt it was also best to stop the night activity and the complaints coming in from residents around that area.
So my question, Jack, goes back more to the question of whether or not it's appropriate for us to have a fee for use of these spaces. Because
I don't see why not.
Okay. Well, then can we draft a resolution for next time and say we're going to charge a fee? So the people they can use our space if that's the best space in town. But, I think it's a lost revenue opportunity for us if we just let it go for free all the time.
Yeah,
It's almost under constant use now.
Yeah, we should come up with a daily rate to use the property.
Is there something that we could benchmark that would be from people who've done this before?
Least
to have a
ballpark of what the.
We should ask Allward what they're charging.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the market rate.
There. Jeff, do you have any idea of price on, anything that what might be reasonable?
No, I don't offhand, but I can certainly find out and give you a range. Yes.
That'd be great. Okay.
I mean, we spent countless hours talking about blight from real estate signs, right? Is that really the direction you want to go? Because look, if you have big pockets, it doesn't matter if you charge them $100, whatever the number is, they're just going to pay it. Is this something that you want?
I do agree. What I think is that, we're giving something away for free right now. I'm sorry, did I talk over you, Councilwoman?
No, I was saying that it's a good spot and they have to stage somewhere, and I'd rather they stage out there than in a residential neighborhood. That's, when we have these people working in town.
You're worried that if we charge a fee, that it'll encourage them to park elsewhere?
No, I don't think so. I think that it's just, it's worth having. I mean, I think I was speaking to Councilman McQueen's concern that it's a blight having those trucks there, but they have to be somewhere. I think if they're doing work in town, that was my point. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think Allwood was violating the zoning ordinance by allowing them to do it there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Right,
is any
yeah,
just straw poll? Are any council members opposed to the idea of charging for our space? Is that a bad idea?
No.
Good idea.
What was
No,
all
it's not
charging?
bad.
Do we know?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, we don't know.
I thought of it.
Yeah, good job.
You get a gold star, Councilman O'Day.
Tom's just thinking about the next fiscal budget is about ready to
That's
start.
right. Yes.
That's it.
Pre-planning.
Yes. Get that
To
revenue.
make up for the cost of our diversity and inclusion training. We'll offset it.
Okay, so Jeff, you will do a little research and maybe we can have a resolution for the next meeting. So the next time we get a request like this, we can generate.
Yes, I will.
Yep.
I will do
It's on my
that.
list.
Yes.
Okay. Jack, you have a draft resolution for us for the Realtor.
I do, and Anthony distributed, we did an RFP the day after our last meeting, and Anthony circulated it, and we've got no responses, and I'm not sure why, because we're allowed to pay a 5% commission, which I believe is the standard rate these days. So maybe some of you all can reach out to people. I know John can't because he's got to
Oh, you
recuse himself.
didn't get any response?
No, which I don't, in the past, we've gotten plenty of responses. I
Yeah.
think he got one inquiry. Is that correct, Anthony?
Yeah, we have gotten responses in the past, but for some reason we didn't get anything for this one. And it's been on our website. It was sent to local realtors.
Jack, would it be appropriate? I could, I'm going to recuse my decision making, but I can certainly tell someone to tell people that, like, hey, get all, wake up.
That's what I'm saying. I think
Okay.
people on the council should reach out to.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe
actually, I
no.
did. I forwarded it to some realtors I know, and nobody responded. Wow.
I really don't understand why they wouldn't.
And it's on our website. They can go get it, at any time. But yeah, we haven't had any response.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Is there a section? Like how do they?
There is a section. Let me see. It's for notices. Let me take a look here.
Notices. Okay.
Well, basically,
a latest
we don't
notices,
even need the RFP.
and it's under the bid section.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Anthony.
Okay.
We don't.
I was just going to say. I mean, we just want them to help us sell the property, like they do if you sell your house. It's nothing terribly technical about it.
Oh, you're technically giving them a listing.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't understand why.
Nobody
you wouldn't be
responded.
interested.
Yeah. Okay. So call all your realtor friends.
Yes.
Somerset County Transportation, we're back to that. They want to know if we want to do the Friday bus. And Anthony got us some information on that. And I guess it's been COVID that has kept people off the bus at this point, right?
That's what it seems like, yes.
That nobody wants to go out. But even then, we had usually 4 regular riders. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yes.
But this is, and we're only talking about the Fridays, right? Because Mondays they already provided. Mondays
That's
provided at
correct.
free of charge. So this
Right.
is only for Friday. So I don't know. I mean, even with the numbers from the years before, I think it's been very minimally used.
It looks
I
like
don't see the return on the investment even for our residents.
it looked like from the years before the maximum number was 5 actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Although, it's looks like the people went every month, right? I mean, it was oh no, there's a few zeros there. Well, that's this year.
A few, but yeah, it seems like we had at least one or two people using it every week, except for maybe a few exceptions here and there. But that's all. That's about all we had.
And the question is it that people don't know about it, or they just don't need it? That's the question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to reach out at least one more time just to make sure that we do our.
I think we had a similar conversation last year, like, oh, let's do a better reach out. And I guess I don't know that we actually did anything different.
No.
To reach out. So if we're going to do it again, as Councilwoman Zamora suggests, I fully support that idea, but I think we need to document what additional efforts we're taking this time, so that we can have some sort of evaluation of whether or not our efforts are successful.
Yeah, I mean,
I can post. Okay.
Yeah, I was saying, no, I think you had made some suggestions about getting it to the VNA and to putting flyers in the supermarkets and that kind of thing, and reaching out to people. But I know that if you stop it, those 5 people, have no other option. So that's, I don't want to put them in that position.
Mayor, maybe we could actually interview the people who have been using it to find out if they do have any other options, because I mean, that's only 5 people. We could just talk to them and just say, are you using it because it's there, or are you using it because you need it?
Yeah.
I mean, and they also have Mondays too, right? It's not only.
Yeah, we're just talking about
Friday.
the incremental Friday, right?
Well, Friday they do a bunch of stops. I think they go to the hardware store and a couple of other places, not just ShopRite. I think that's the difference. But yeah, we have the names of those people, don't we?
Yes.
Okay.
And is it really just 5 people, like the same 5 people over and over again, or is it like?
Yes.
Okay, so we can reach
it's
out.
not different. It's not a different set of 5 people, every week or so. It is the same.
The same
5 people. I think that this year maybe like only 3, but I can see if they have names from, a couple more names from the past.
Yeah, see if they have the contact information, because I think Tom's idea is a good one, that we should reach out and see how badly they need this service.
Yeah, I mean, and with all of the OEM volunteers that we have, I know we've been reaching out, like Councilman Hammond said last time, right, with, getting things to people. If things are needed, I'm sure that I'll go for the 5 people and drive and do what they need to do. But I mean, I'm sure they want to get out of the house too. I don't know what the purpose is, right? So.
Yeah, or if they need something that they, people will go shop for them if they have to. So yeah, I think we could meet their needs if we know what they are. So.
And to clarify, we're only talking about the incremental Friday trips, right? We're not, the other trips are county supplied trips, which will continue.
Correct.
Anyway,
Right.
we're just talking about just the Friday trips.
Yeah.
Right. That is correct. Yeah, the Monday trips are going to be going on regardless of what we decide for the Fridays, but this is just for the Fridays for our Burnsville residents.
Are the Monday trips though as extensive as the Friday? In other words, do they go to all the same locations? I think the mayor implied that Friday was more extensive.
I think that Friday they just go to the places in Burnsville, like Burnsville ShopRite, Burnsville Kings, and a hardware store.
And bank. I think they'll go to the bank too.
And banks, yeah. Since the Monday trips are more for Burnsville residents, and for other residents, they may go to other, like places in Basking Ridge, for example. But the Friday ones are just for Burnsville locations. I can look and see on my email about the Monday thing.
On Monday, we pay for that as well, though, right? It's not. Do we pay for that, or does the county pay for it?
I think that's a county-run thing, so the county pays for that.
So we're only paying for the Friday. Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm clicking over to the page, but do we have the cost for this year?
They estimated $5,291 for 2021.
Yeah.
And for 2020, right now, they're not including October through December, but we're at about $3,000.
Wow.
And there were no trips. There were no trips though in April or May. So that's 5
Oh.
months that's unaccounted for in 2020, according to their records.
They charge us by volume, or they charge us by trips?
By trip, yeah. So it's just that if one person or 8 people go, it's going to be charged for a trip. Yes.
So they
They're
didn't
using-
charge us for April and May, it looks like.
Right.
Okay. That was nice.
Do we have a number like that we kind of can formulate now as to what we want this to look like? Like how many people do you think it would take for us to say, yes, this makes sense? 10 people, 20 people?
Well, how many does the bus take? 10, 12?
10 is what it holds, yes.
10. I mean, so if we could get a consistent 7 people, which is only really 2 more than what we have, then it would be worth it.
I don't know that those people were consistent though. I think it was 5 all year. I don't know how many trips each had. I think Anthony did have that though.
Yeah, as far as this year goes, there were only 3 people who used it.
Yeah.
And I will say, I'm just looking up while I have it on the screen. The Monday trips are to Burnsville ShopRite only. I misspoke and said it may be in places like Basking Ridge, but other Berners Township residents can use it on Mondays, but they only go to Burnsville ShopRite on Mondays.
Yeah.
That's organized through the county.
So there would be a value to keep Friday if we had the right ridership, because that goes to more places.
Right.
Yes.
I think
Fridays would be to Burnsville residents.
Yeah, and it's based on, whoever gets on the bus and says, well, I need to go to Bank of America, I need to, go to CVS, they'll just drive around town and take them where they need to go. So it's a good service if people used it. So let's do Tom's suggestion and get the contact information for those 5 people and see, and they may know people that need it or whatever. So we'll start with that.
I think to Councilwoman Zamara's point, though, too, and I agree with what you just said, Mayor, but I think Councilwoman Zamara's point is, it'd be nice for us to kind of have idea, okay, 70% usage, utilization is a good target. That means we need to get 2 more over 2019 numbers. That's substantially different than maybe 2020, but I think COVID could obviously have a huge impact on how many people are using a community van this year. So probably comparing ourselves to 2019 makes more sense. And if we did, in fact, have 5 people every week using it in 2019, and we only need to get to, if we agree that we only need to get to 70% or higher usage, we need a minimum of 2 more people to use it each week. It seems like that's within striking distance.
Well, and the other thing is, I don't think you want a full bus right now because you still need to be spacing out people. So if it only holds 10, I think 5, 6, 7 would be really pushed. You don't want 10 people jammed in there.
That's a good point. And we may have to take a pass on what we do for 2021, given the circumstances, and maybe look at this more cost benefit for 2022.
Yeah.
What is the age again to use the
They didn't really specify an age limit or an age minimum for this. I don't see that was provided. I don't have that
I'll ask an ignorant question, but is the bus wheelchair accessible?
Yes, I have heard. Yes, that it is. I think that takes up a couple, a few seats if someone with a wheelchair does go on a bus, but it is accessible.
Anthony, you had pulled the 2019 numbers though, didn't you, as well? Because we said this the last time too.
I think it was 4. I think it was 4 in 2019. It's been about 4 or 5. It really hasn't really gone over that any time in the recent years.
Okay.
Is it the same 4 or 5?
Yeah, and again, it's the same people who take it every week. Yeah.
Okay. We'll get more information on that. And
It says 60 plus and persons with disabilities ages 18 and over.
Okay. I could write it. See. Okay. Correspondence. We did have I just want to make sure everybody saw the email from Carol Bianchi about us working together with JCP&L. I think part of that was, the resolution we passed probably, I don't know, did we send it to JCP&L? Do we know where that went? The one that asked for a private, an outside audit for the storm? Do you
They got
remember?
it, I know, because she emailed me, it referenced it, so she's aware of it.
Yeah, I'm just not sure if we sent it to them. So just, you know, they want to have better communication with them before we take any action, I guess. Unfinished business. Jack, you sent us a bunch of more information that was equally as confusing.
Yes.
On holiday displays.
And it definitely is. It's just a mishmash of things, and it's inconsistent. But if you want to take a look at it, we can over the next few months. I mean, it's not going to happen this year, obviously.
Yeah. Maybe we should wait and see what happens this year. If maybe there's a new case this case.
Yeah. We can only hope.
Another hearing and a decision. So that was our any other unfinished business?
But if I just go backwards to that last one, I mean, I try to read through all that legal jargon and everything, but I think also the cases kind of all run together. Is there a way of just creating a grid, like you know, this case said yes, no, maybe, you know, this case just so we can, you know, like seeing a roster, you know, you can't tell the players without a scorecard.
Yeah, I can put crashed Christmas tree menorah in different cases how they held to try to give you a better idea. I'll do that for the next meeting.
That was, I agree with you, Jeff. That was just, you know, one case ran into the next. And
yes, I was just trying to show you how confused it is.
It is. You succeeded.
Yeah, good.
Do we have any new business? Nothing. We now have a second open session. If anyone from the public would like to be heard, please raise your hand on any topic for 3 minutes. Anyone? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, I will close the public session. Would someone like to make a motion to go into executive?
I'll move to go into executive session.
And we will return. So, right, we will reconvene.
Yes, we will.
Okay. Did I get a second?
I seconded.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we are in executive. Thank you for those that were here.
Let me make some moves here, and I will tell you when we're